All right, YouTube, there's some rather exciting news here. Link in the description as always to cron.com, although this story is now being covered by other sites, Metro and a few others. Um, NASA has released photos now that appear to depict either some sort of glowing object or light coming from the surface or below the surface of Mars. You can check these out. The image it shows when you first load it, it's off in the distance. They then have it blown up, and it's fairly clearly either some sort of illuminated object or some sort of light coming from Mars. Apparently this one is not a lens artifact or a glitch of any sort. It's not just a dead pixel. It's an actual object or light that's coming from Mars. The implications for this are vast, because regardless of what's actually making this light, it's there, and presumably the rover will go over and study what this is, or at least attempt to take better images of it. Could it be that there's some sort of crystalline substructure to the crust of Mars? Well, that would be interesting. It wouldn't be, Ancient Aliens level interesting, but it would still be something if there's a quartzite or something below the surface of this, dust and little pebbles and boulders and so forth. Specifically, igneous crystals would be interesting, especially if they were, not ancient in form, indicating volcanic activity or whatever. Or it could be some sort of, phosphorescent bacteria. It could be, maybe some alien race left something there, sort of like a beacon or a landmark, and it just, has a little solar cell next to it, just generates light so they know, where to land next time around. That might be a little bit outside of the realm of possibilities, but you do have this now image coming from NASA that appears to show something abnormal on the surface of Mars. Probably not little green men, but there's something there. There's something that should be explored more in depth. It's very strange when NASA actually releases an image like this. Usually, anything interesting in any of these photos, the photos quickly get deleted from the site, or they never appear there to begin with. Of course, there were some images that appeared to show, objects floating or flying through the air on Mars. Well, you're not going to find those on the NASA website anymore. They exist in archives, but they're not actually hosted on the site anymore. The one problem that has been done here with these first media sources that are releasing this particular story is that they gave a sort of conspiracy theorist blogger room to rant on these articles. And while their theories may be true, this will turn off the vast majority of people to being interested, because they'll say, oh, it's some ancient aliens conspiracy bullshit. Including that in the article will make them think that, even though these are images from NASA itself. These are taken by the rover, there's no question about that. People will still see that and they'll say, oh, well, it's just a bunch of mumbo jumbo. It's probably just, reflected light coming off of windblown, some sort of sedimentary rock. Well, it's highly polished by wind-blown sand, and so it's reflecting light onto this spot, and that's sort of, it's just a rock sticking up that just happens to be glaring with light. You've heard all sorts of explanations before. I do believe, by the way, in extraterrestrial life. I think mathematically speaking, there's no legitimate reason, now that we've got better telescopes and better technology, we are slowly starting to realize that not only are there a lot more Earth-sized planets in the habitable zones of other stars, not only are we realizing that, we're also realizing water is everywhere. Until fairly recently, the last decade or so, it was thought that Earth had water, there was ice on Mars, but that was it. We thought that was essentially the limit of water. We thought it was rare in the universe. We are now finding there's water on the moon. It's ice and under the surface, but it's there. There's water on some of the moons on various planets. There's probably water on the other planets. We're now seeing that there are essentially geysers on Pluto. which is you would think that Pluto wouldn't have that sort of activity because it's so far from the sun, but it's there. We are now finding that at least within this solar system, water is common. We now have evidence that solar systems on nearby stars exhibit water. We've found several planets that appear to be more waterlogged than Earth. They have actual oceans, actual continents, actual volcanic activity. They have all of the facets that Earth has, and yet we persist in this sort of delusional belief that it's almost impossible that there's life out there. I ask why, and I think it's partially because of religion that teaches, well, only man matters. And there can't be life out there. God couldn't possibly create life anywhere else. Earth is the only place. It's sort of a throwback to the Earth is the center of the universe theories at the time before Galileo. It's really screwy. The other thing I think is people sort of look at this as a bunch of conspiracy nonsense. They equate anyone who's saying that they believe in aliens with someone who's saying, well, aliens came down to Earth, and aliens engineered man, and aliens are actually gods, or aliens are here constantly abducting cows or whatever. But that doesn't have to be the case. I believe that there is a life. I personally choose to believe there's probably bacterial life on other cosmic bodies in this solar system. Now, they haven't found it yet. They have found the organic building blocks and the chemicals necessary for life to assemble on Mars. They have already found it. They found that the composition of this soil on Mars is very good for the possibility of life. And it does have the movement, the melt and refreeze of water. We've seen it now. We can see that there are almost seasons on Mars. The same with the moon. Could have some sort of life on it. Of course, some people theorize the moon is a chunk of Earth that got blasted off into space. Well, if that's the case, then probably, yeah, there probably is bacterial life, at least archaebacteria living deep below the surface, where it's potentially warmer and more sheltered from extreme temperature changes. Yes, it would probably be present. I believe that there's intelligent life out there in the universe. If not in this solar system, I don't believe that it would be in this solar system. Because we can reasonably suspect that it's not. If not there, then at least, yes, probably in this galaxy, probably, each star system might have its own sentient race for all we know. There's no way to know because we simply can't tell yet. But mathematically speaking, I believe there is life out there. In fact, I believe the universe is teeming with life, sort of like a soup. I don't look at the universe as sort of this cold, dead expanse of cosmic bodies where this one lonely planet is populated by a species capable of upper cognition. I believe that it's all over the place. But this could show that there is some sort of life on Mars. Most likely, if it is evidence of life, what it would be is either, some sort of leftover alien artifact, or it would be some sort of biological thing going on with bacteria. Some bacteria are luciferase is a great example. It is possible for bacteria to create their own light. Maybe this is a thermal vent. That's another possibility. It could literally be, if it is a thermal vent, it could be that it was shooting water up at the time, and that did reflect light. That would be interesting evidence, too, of volcanic activity, or some other heated activity going on below the surface of Mars, which would, again, open up portals to new ideas, because right now we think of it sort of as a dead planet, a planet that, doesn't really have much in the way of seismic or volcanic activity. It's sort of just this chunk of rock that's sterile. There's nothing really there. We're slowly, I believe, finding out that that's not exactly the case. Of course, we didn't realize there was any liquid water on Mars until a few years ago, and it was found that actually, yes, the subsoil of Mars is chock full of water, liquid water, not even just ice, although that's present too, and it exists for at least the first several feet. Well, it could be just like Earth. There was another article just yesterday. There was a mineral found in a diamond mined deep from within the Earth that showed evidence of the inclusion of water. And what this is now causing them to believe is that the Earth actually has a great deal of subterranean water, either in caverns, underground lakes or whatever, or actually in the soil itself, in the actual crust. Is this possibly the case with even dead planets, such as the moon. Well, moon isn't a planet, but you know what I mean. The moon, Mars, all these other planets. Yes, possibly. I believe that there's water everywhere. There's probably bacteria all over the universe. In fact, it's astonishing that we haven't found any yet. I think it's only a matter of time before we do. I think that if you dig far enough, you will probably find some sort of bacterial life on Mars. Because at one time, Mars functioned very much like Earth. It did have running water, we know that now. It had volcanic activity, we know that. It had seismic activity. It was warmer, potentially. It had an atmosphere. It had all the facets that you need for life to be present. If we don't find any living, actual bacteria on the surface of Mars, we will probably find at least the leftover remains, possibly of bacterial colonies or something like that. But this needs to be investigated because this appears to be artificial light. If it is, where is it coming from? What's causing it? That is a question to be left to NASA. Of course, if it was, some alien race leaving behind some sort of weird energy canister or something that just shoots up a ray of light randomly, they probably wouldn't tell us. They'd probably say, uh-oh, this is going to really get people worried. We'd better black this part of Mars out from all the satellite feeds and telescopic pictures and cover it up. There is also that aspect. Because even though I'm sure that the nerds at NASA would love to be the first to announce to the world, yes, there's life out there, I think there are probably more powerful people leaning on them to not do so. But it's interesting anyway. Hopefully we'll get at least some higher quality images of this spot, in the rare chance that it is just a lens artifact or a glitchy pixel. Of course, we'll know that probably in the next few days or weeks. Remember, there was that sort of donut-shaped rock, the jelly donut rock that we all remember, and they said, oh, it was just sort of kicked up from the rover's wheel, and that turned out to be the case. The reason it looked different is because the underside of that rock wasn't coated in a layer of essentially sediment. Will this turn out to be the same? Just sort of an aberrance, a problem with the camera, or, just a chunk of rock that's reflecting light, or will it turn out to be something more? No way to be sure, but definitely something that they should follow up on, and something we'll probably find out more about in the next few days or weeks. That's about all. Peace out.